They say space is the final frontier, and many accept this assertion. Despite the theoretical remoteness of space, there currently exists a shift in opinion in the United States governing and defense planning circles, causing leaders to accept the reality that space is not just the final frontier, but space is also a war-fighting domain. Despite arguments put forth over the last 30 years that space should remain free of Earth's conflicts, reality has dictated otherwise, as world powers with competent militaries have acquired the capabilities to execute offensive as well as defensive operations within the domain of space itself. The United States is being pragmatic in their approach as the practicalities of outer space dictate that there is a real possibility of combat engagements in space. If America and its global military order want to ensure continued dominance, the United States has realized that it will have to take some policy risks in a time where near-peer competition in space is growing at a rapid and significant pace. Inaction, inadequate action, or even worse, misguided action will all have negative effects and place the United States' ability of enforcing its deterrent strategy at great risk. Outer space is a dynamic and rapidly evolving area. Space is important to the military for a variety of reasons. Satellite communications and observation of the Earth's surface are critically important for national security. Today's modern armed forces rely on space-based assets for reconnaissance, weather tracking, communication, navigation, and so much more. Thus, the protection of space-based systems is critically important, while the technology used in space is for aiding in military operations. For now, although weapons are present in outer space, nations are still keeping an uneasy peace. The technology and military weapons that can theoretically be used in outer space not only exist, but have been tested and are fully functional. U.S. military operations can be divided into 6 domains: subsurface naval, surface naval, ground, air, cyberspace, and now, with the advent of the United States Space Force, outer space. The United States Space Force is a space service branch of the United States Armed Forces, and currently, the world's only independent space force. Presently, China and Russia are labeled as the biggest operational threats to the United States in outer space. Although several orbital weapon systems were designed by the United States and the USSR during the Cold War. As noted earlier, there is an uneasy peace between the superpowers in outer space. However, several nations have deployed orbital surveillance systems to observe other nations, with an eye towards the eventual full militarization of outer space. On this iteration of Up Close and Center, we will discuss the full militarization of outer space and where African nations stand in the race to weaponize space. My name's Ebube Okoli. Welcome to Up Close and Center. Please remember to like, share, subscribe, and hit that bell notification icon so that you'll be among the first to know every time new content becomes available. Additionally, if you have any further analysis on the topic, please feel free to use the comment section. The United States Space Force is the world's only dedicated independent space force. It organizes, trains, and equips space forces in order to protect U.S. and allied interests in space. At present, the force has just under 20,000 personnel, and this number is expected to grow significantly in the coming decade. Moreover, America is moving at light speed in this arena. However, other competent nations are taking note and making their own moves to maintain the balance of power on Earth and in outer space. Not surprisingly, Russia and China have enhanced their space programs in recent years. creating new threats to the United States' security in outer space. According to U.S. officials, the two countries have been investing heavily in their space forces. Currently, Russia has the ability to use at least one of its satellites to physically and virtually attack other nations' satellites orbiting the Earth. This ability was demonstrated last year when it test-fired a missile from one of its satellites to successfully destroy another one of its satellites, therein demonstrating to the world its capacity. Likewise, according to reports, China has satellites equipped with robotic arms, therein giving them the ability to physically grab and seize other satellites in orbit. Rising threats against U.S. commercial and military satellites are one of the main reasons for the U.S.'s 25% increase in its latest budget request for the U.S. Space Force and Space Development Agency. The upcoming budget calls for $773 billion in defense, with $24.5 billion of that being deployed for Space Force. Accordingly, China has grand designs and is currently planning to build its first base on the moon within this decade. Plans already include landing astronauts in the desired location. In subsequent years, as the country steps up to challenge the United States' dominance in space, this was demonstrated by the fact that in 2019, China became the first nation to land a rover on the far side of the moon. Allegedly, China's goal is to eventually expand the base into an international research station. However, others believe that this base will serve as its main military outpost in space. Furthermore, the Chinese base is intended to be the first outpost on the moon's south pole. This is an area that scientists believe could even contain ancient remnants of water. However, NASA is not to be outdone, as it's also targeting that side of the moon. NASA's leadership previously stated that they are aiming for that area in order to checkmate China, who they believe may even try to claim resource-rich areas of the moon if it gets there first. China's plans not only include the moon's south pole, but China has also ramped up its ambitions in recent years, and is even setting its sights on eventually setting up bases on Mars. As expected, these plans have put it in direct competition with the United States. Furthermore, Russia, China, and the United States are all spending billions of dollars to not just place human life on the moon, but also to access the resources that could foster life on the lunar surface, or even send spacecrafts to Mars, while simultaneously looking to weaponize outer space both for defensive and offensive purposes. Space-based systems are becoming an increasingly important component of military power. At present, no country can rival or contest U.S. space dominance, or the advantages that this provides to America's terrestrial military operations. However, this equation is fast changing as other competent nations are pushing to take man's conflict into outer space.
Over the pressure helmet is a clear visor, then a gold-coated visor to protect against micrometeors and solar radiation.
With the world's military powers fighting to leave their mark on outer space, for many on the African continent, the question now becomes, where, if at all, are African nations? And what, if anything, is their agenda for keeping up with their competition in the extraterrestrial game of power? Please join us for part 2 of this series, where we answer the questions raised by this expose. This concludes our latest iteration of Up Close and Center. Due to the nature of this content, we ask that you please help us defeat the intentions of the algorithm by liking, subscribing, and hitting the bell notification icon so that you will be among the first to know every time new content becomes available. As always, thank you for your time and your commitment to the continent. If you have any further analysis on the topic, please feel free to use the comment section.
We stand on the shoulders of American patriots who built the great highways and railroads, who dug out the Panama Canal, who won 2 world wars, and who put a man on the face of the moon. And if you see what I did yesterday with NASA, right? And you have the Air Force, and now you will soon have the Space Force, because that's where it's at, space. That's where it's at. We'll be the leader.